Good evening and welcome to Golf Central. I'm Gary Williams. We begin tonight with news from the season's second major on the LPGA Tour. World number 28 Charley Hull has withdrawn from the ANA Inspiration due to a positive COVID-19 test. Hull tweeting this out earlier today. As part of the LPGA Tour's COVID-19 testing process, I was informed this morning that I tested positive for COVID-19. I have withdrawn from the ANA Inspiration. I didn't feel great yesterday, but I put it down to jet lag, the heat, my asthma playing up. I now realize I have some mild symptoms which feel similar to having a cold, and I am self-isolating and working with the tour on contact tracing. I'm very disappointed to have to withdraw from what is one of my favorite events of the year, but wish everyone the best of luck at this week's tournament and look forward to when I can return to playing on tour. For more on this story, we say hello to Lisa Cornwell on site at the ANA Inspiration.
Gary, well, it actually started out as just a normal news day. In fact, our biggest story, and it is a big story indeed, one that we'll be following all week long. The high heat in this part of the country, this part of California, in the desert, triple digits, and it's expected really for the most part of the week. But then the news started leaking that a player had possibly tested positive for COVID-19. We did get that confirmation when Charley Hull, as you read, posted it to her Twitter and Instagram accounts confirming that she had indeed tested positive. Now, Charley was actually out on the golf course playing a practice round when a rules official came out and notified her of the positive test. I can tell you that she was playing alongside Brittany Lincecum and Ashley Buhai. Now, here's the sort of interesting twist to this story. Charley's full-time caddy is Adam Woodward, and you'll remember back after the restart, Adam Woodward was the caddy at the time, just filling in while Charley wasn't playing full-time yet over here after the restart for Perrin Delacour. He tested positive in the first event back in Ohio. Now here he is involved in it again. Of course, we'll have to wait, in fact, to find out actually how all of the contact tracing is going. But we do know that players like Brittany, obviously Ashley and their caddies who were out there, they will be heavily involved in that, as will anybody else who's come in contact with Charley Hull. But it is a big story today. Here's the good news for the commissioner and the LPGA and the rest of the players and everybody out here. Like the PGA Tour, and we've talked about, Commissioner Mike Wan has done a fantastic job of isolating players, isolating media. It's a very small crew out here. It's so different from in years past, not just being in September versus March, but obviously everything that goes along with it because of this global pandemic. But hopefully Charley Hull, those mild symptoms will remain mild. We'll, of course, continue to keep you updated on what we learn in terms of who else she might have come in contact with, who else might be involved in this contact tracing. So that's the story early on here Tuesday. Hopefully it's just golf and weather from here on out.
Lisa, thank you. Time now for an LPGA update presented by the Volunteers of America. It was April of last year when Jin Young Ko took the leap into Poppy's Pond after securing her first major championship victory. Ko is #1 in the Rolex World Rankings, but will not tee it up this week. She has not yet played on the LPGA Tour in 2020 due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Now, this week, the players are going to be dealing with temperatures exceeding 100 degrees. And as a result, the LPGA announced that caddies would be allowed to use golf carts during competition. Let's hear from some of the players on what they are preparing for this week.
I walk around with a towel around my neck, a wet towel. He's going to take a cart all week. I'll have a sun umbrella, and I'll just we're going to put a cooler in the cart, have some Gatorade, have some snacks in there, just so that you can kind of always manage it as best you can. But yeah, I think you just kind of have to drink a lot of water. You have to drink more than you think you do.
It's pretty hot. It's very hot. It's hot that you touch like the door handle of your car, and it's kind of on the slight sizzling point. I think you cannot drink almost like too much water. You know, it's pretty dry heat, so you know you definitely need to stay hydrated. But I honestly think I prefer drier, a little hotter temperature here than the kind of slightly lower and more humid weather in Orlando. So to me, this is great.
Wow. She's always had a great attitude. You better have one this week in Rancho Mirage, because triple digits across the board, starting at a Benjamin on Thursday and all the way up to 109 on Sunday. And when you look back on this season that was truncated and obviously abbreviated, stopped down in the middle of March, 36 total events were conducted. Dustin Johnson and Justin Thomas both had those 3 wins. You had 8 first-time winners, notably Sungjae Im, who won that Honda right before the shutdown. It was the second to last event before they shut it down at the Players. 5 wins by players 23 or younger. You get the sense, you add to that trip the 9 first-timers at the Tour Championship.
Yeah.
Maybe this really is kind of a transitioning. But somebody who's not transitioning is Dustin Johnson. He has ascended back to #1 in the world. This happens sometimes in other sports. The best player in the sport doesn't necessarily win the, quote, MVP. Is the best player in the game right now the guy who you think is going to be the player of the year?
I think so. I think the majority of players are going to look at, yeah, okay, he was outside the top 100 when he started playing back after the pandemic. Did not have a Dustin Johnson-type season prior to the pandemic, but did have one of his best seasons, minus, winning the major championship in closing out the FedEx Cup. I mean, you look at his body of work. 10 events since he came back. 2 of them he did. Now, he had back trouble in the missed cut where he did not. He shot awful scores. But if you have a back injury that's nagging, I understand that. As someone who's gone through that, you're going to hit some really ugly golf shots at times. He withdrew the following week. And then, he won at Travelers. And then when you look at the playoffs, the only guy that beat him was with a 66-foot putt in a playoff, not in regulation. He didn't lose to anybody in regulation in the 3 playoff events. And he won one of them by a record number of strokes. I mean, in distancing himself from fields again and again. Now, I know this last week he won the net division.
Sure.
But look, he earned that right, and you have to have waiting, like we talked about previously. You've got to have these things that give some weighting to the regular season, and I think he's player of the year. You could make an argument for Justin Thomas, who had more top 10s. But again, I just do not see the way he closed out the season and got the FedEx Cup. I said of the players that we talked about going in.
Sure.
We talked about Rahm. We talked about Thomas, Morikawa, DJ. We said whoever wins the FedEx Cup, if any of them do, they're going to be the player of the year, and I think that's going to be the case.
I think that would be the lean that I would feel that his peers would look at what he did, and it wasn't like the whole restart for him. He was the guy who was there to win that only major that was part of the season. He did not lose.
He finished
tied for second.
Yes.
Tied for second.
So that's the other thing, because you could say, well, the major and Colin Morikawa. Look, Colin Morikawa distanced himself from that field in a way that first-time major winners typically don't do, but DJ was the next best guy. So, again, you throw that in, yeah, DJ's the guy. I think.
Well, yeah, he's a thoroughbred.